Hello lovely people, today I thought I would review two Dracula retellings that I read recently.
The
two books I will be talking about is The Root of Ice and Salt by Jose Luiz Zarate, which is translated by David Bowles, and The Deathless Girls by Kiran, Milwood, Hargrave. These are both very different genres and approaches, but they are both retelling aspects of the story of Dracula. They are both queer retellings of Dracula. So I thought there would be an interesting discussion at play here, especially because I read them both in quite quick succession, so my reading of them definitely informed each other. I'm going to start off with The Root of Ice and Salt. Jose Luis Zarate is a Mexican author. This was originally published in 1995, but this is the first time that an English translation of it has been available. I would definitely be interested in reading more work from both this author and this translator because I really loved this. It's reimagining the voyage of the boat that takes Dracula to Whitby, and it's really suffused with gothic imagery but also queer desire. And one of the things that I felt was so wonderful about this was this mood and atmosphere that was created, because I know how this is going to end because I have read Dracula, so I know that this ship is going to arrive at Whitby. There's going to be one person on board who is dead, who is tied to the wheel, and all the other crew will be gone. So given that I know that, I think the fact that this was still able to create such deep suspense was really brilliant. It's split into different sections. So the first section is from the captain's point of view. He really has this conflict within himself because he's attracted to men and he's attracted to the crew of his ship, but he can never express that attraction to them. So the first portion of this is so suffused with this desire that he is attempting to control, that is consuming him, and he sees the physicality of his desire. He sees it reflected in aspects of the ship, and it has this real stifling feeling, and the way that the ship ties into this the salt on skin and stuff like this. There's a lot of very sensory imagery described. As this goes on, he starts to have these dreams, and these dreams are both drawing on some of his past history and then also exploring some of these desires. As this frustrated desire but also these dreams start to build, you start to get a hint of some of this supernatural stuff that is also occurring. The rats are behaving very strangely, and it's these really small details that help to really build this tension, because he's already so tense in regards to clamping down on desire and stuff, that then when these small things start happening and you know how much they're going to build but he doesn't, it creates this again this anticipation of action and stuff. The second part of the narrative is extracts from the log that is read in Dracula, the novel itself. So it is these official logs that describe how certain crew members suddenly disappear and the odd things that are happening on the ship, and then it flashes back to our guide's narration. Those logs were one of my favourite aspects of Dracula because I thought that they were so successful at creating this creeping sense of dread, the horror of being on this ship in the middle of the sea and people are disappearing, and how are they disappearing? So you have the way the different crew members react to this, the way that they feed off of each other's emotions and stuff like that. And then this final crescendo where our main character sort of takes this last stand, I thought was so brilliant. There is this real exploration throughout that is sort of making explicit some of that implicit homoeroticism that is in Dracula. Whether or not that was deliberate, there's whole debates about Bram Stoker and himself and all those things, and I'm not going to go into them, but very much vampirism is a metaphor that is often linked to queerness, and this is making that quite explicit, but it's also really doing it in a way towards the end where it's actually drawing a line, and he is grappling with all of these things that he's internalized, that you see why he's internalized it from these glimpses of his past that you've seen, and he really reaches this point of claiming his queer identity and no longer trying to hold it at bay and viewing it as this bad thing, but claiming it and then using that as almost like a strength to stand against what this threat is, what the actual threat at play is. For such a short text, I just feel like it was doing so much and it was exploring so much in a way that when I think about how this was published in I think it was 1996, might be 1994, I can't remember just now. It feels so interesting for that time and that sort of thing. I think that he manages all of these unsettling elements so well, and they come together so well, and I just was gripped at every moment despite the fact that I knew the inevitability. And I think something that reimaginings can do really well is if they take the knowledge that you have, but it doesn't matter that you already know that. It's like that adds into what you're feeling because it builds to this dread and it builds to this unsettling and all that sort of thing. So I just really loved this. I thought it was really great. I'm really pleased I read it. To move on to The Deathless Girls by Kiran Milwood Hargrave. In comparison to this, which is like adult sort of horror type thing, this is a YA retelling. This is based on a part of the series which was looking at sort of overlooked women from classic fiction, I think was the gist. So this is giving a backstory to the brides of Dracula. So this follows Lil and Kizzy, who are travellers, and on their birthday, when they're supposed to have their divining and find out what their future has in store for them, their family is attacked and they're taken as slaves. And I won't give you any more of a plot setup than that, because one of my things that I had about this book is it's not a very long book, it's only about 300 pages, and having read the blurb, what happens on the blurb is about half of the book. So initially I had like a little bit of a pacing thing with this book where I was perfectly enjoying reading it, but it just felt like it did take quite a while to get to like past that setup for me. As they're slaves, they hear about the guy called the Dragon. I think we have a suspicion who the Dragon might relate to. Really what's at the heart of this is this like bond between these two twins. I definitely think that this book picked up for me in like the final 100 pages or so. So the first 200 pages were, a lot of it was this setup, but then you reach a point and then I felt like the plot kind of kicked into gear somewhat. We had like almost like a quest, like a thing to achieve. There was movement happening forwards, and I really enjoyed that. I think sometimes in the first part, because the sisters are like in this place, and we were spending a lot of time there establishing like how awful it is and that sort of thing, I think I sometimes felt a little bit impatient because I knew that that's not where the end of this journey was going to be. Whereas when we got to this point where the plot starts progressing forward, I got a lot more into it because, again, I know how this is going to end. I know that these sisters are going to become brides of Dracula. So I think there was this expectation versus reality aspect at play where I was impatient to reach the point where vampires were present. I was impatient to reach the point where it felt like we were going to get towards this goal rather than just like sitting in this place that I knew would not be our final destination. And some people that might not bother them. They might really enjoy like the exploration of this sisterly bond and stuff like this. I definitely feel like that section introduced like the key characters that we needed to have. Something about it felt like a holding place, I think. The queer relationship in this is between Lil and another girl, and I did enjoy that relationship. I think another similar thing is that when they meet, there's sort of like an instant connection between them, and I felt like their relationship didn't feel fully believable to me until we got to this point again where we're like going forward in the narrative, because it gave them a chance to actually spend like time together and to actually like form that connection. So again, really the final 100 pages of this book is really where it like kicked into gear for me, I have to confess. I did really enjoy like the sisterhood that was at the heart of this story. I think that was a really nice thing to do, was to focus this lens, if we're exploring these characters that are overlooked in fiction, to really focus the lens on those two people's relationship with each other. Sometimes I felt like they were a little surface level at times. I felt like Lil really got a chance to grow when she was like separated from Kizzy, whereas I felt like Kizzy kind of remained quite the same throughout. There were real aspects of the ending that I really liked here. I liked that this sisterly bond that had sort of underlined everything was also so key in this like transition from like human to vampire that you inevitably know is going to happen. So yeah, there were definitely like things that I thought this did really well. I think sort of that like pacing and characterization is kind of where it fell down for me. And also like I just wanted more gothic, I wanted more vampires, I wanted more of this like unsettling side which I felt didn't really come in until the end. My final critique of this is I was a little disappointed that the third Bride of Dracula was just sort of like passingly mentioned in the final chapter but wasn't really explored, because I felt like if the point of this book is to put the lens back on the Brides of Dracula, Why are we just having the third one be like a afterthought anecdote? I don't know. On the whole, I'm glad I read this. I definitely feel like these two fed into each other, and I think potentially because I liked so much of how this one managed my expectations and created an atmosphere, I think maybe in some ways that affected how I then read this one. Maybe if I'd read this before this or something, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I definitely enjoyed this. I don't want to sound like I'm slamming it. I just think that both of these are, by their very nature, having to grapple with the expectations of the audience, the knowledge that the audience is coming in with, and I think that one of them did it slightly more successfully than the other did, but equally they are both approaching different genres and different age groups and that sort of thing. So definitely an interesting reading moment that I had. I'm finding Dracula retellings to be a genre that I'm super enthused about, so if you have any recommendations, do let me know. I have Dracula on my radar, but any others, please do let me know. I'd definitely be interested in them. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've read either of these. Do let me know. Maybe you've had completely different reading experiences from me. I'd really, really like to hear your thoughts. But otherwise, I will leave it there. I hope you're having a really lovely day, and I will see you next time for something different.